Hello there YouTube, and welcome to the inside of my head. I've just been taking a bath, and that really kickstarts the brain. And I have my water ready. Just eaten a kiwi fruit, that should also be good for the brain. But I should not think too much and explain too much of stuff that's out of topic. I've not even explained the topic for today, so it's too early to go off topic just yet. But I actually forgot to put on my deodorant. It's doesn't really matter when you are just like online and stuff, but I like it anyway. I can't even take my own smell, so I like smelling less bad. However, the topic for today is kind of the earth and the shape of the earth and the rotation of the earth and the other like features of the earth. And is it flat? Is it round? That's the normal questions you ask. But why even ask a question if you know the answer? Or if you don't know the answer? If you know the answer, then you should not ask is it flat or round, because you know the answer, so you cannot ask a question like that. But if you didn't know the answer, why ask if it's flat or if it's round? Why do you think that in the first place? Why do you conclude things before you ask the question in the first place? That's what I have really been starting thinking about, because I learned something. What the fuck? I think I just saw a bird falling from the sky. That's strange. It's totally gone now. I saw a kind of big, like this black thing falling from the sky, just straight down really fast. It really looks like it hits the ground, and it hit it hard, but I cannot see anything out there, so whatever. It's probably fine. And fly away again or something. Flew away again. I should remember my times. Right, I cannot continue doing this. I learned something the day before yesterday. And that was not that the earth was flat, and this was not that the earth was round, or not flat, or not round, or whatever. Nothing of these things was what I learned the day before yesterday. I learned that you should never try to disprove a fucked up, stupid ass theory by just debugging that theory by yourself. You should instead try to teach some things from the ground and up. So that means that I should not be talking about why the earth is not flat. I should be talking about which shape is it possible for the earth to have. And I actually kind of like that way of thinking, that you should instead build up towards the conclusion from the bottom, starting with what do we know, what is the possibilities depending on what we know, so and what can we conclude with combining possibilities with what we know, and what is most likely and such. But I also really like to disprove and debug the theory about the earth is flat, because it's so easy to debug, and that makes it so easy to disprove. So I really like disproving this theory, because I can disprove it in one simple sentence, and I have a lot of different sentences, but I can always disprove it in just one sentence, and that's what I like about it, because you can disprove it by one experiment. And many of the experiments that you can use to disprove that the Earth is flat is experiment you can do alone, without money, just a single person, yourself, nothing else, nothing really. You don't need any tools to disprove it. You can do it now. You can do it at any time of the day, mostly, depending on other factors too. However, it makes it so easy to disprove by just telling people, try to do this experiment and tell me if it works or not. And again, it's nothing about that you have to tell me tomorrow, because you can do it right now, and it only takes 1 second if you're really fast to do these experiments. So you can do it in the middle of an argument. Just say, do the experiment now, and then they can do it, and they cannot tell you that you're wrong after doing it, because doing the experiment proves that the Earth is at least not flat. So I really like to disprove that the Earth is flat, but also I really like the idea by proving the Earth's shape, the Earth's possible shapes at least, by building the knowledge up from the bottom up. So I think I will try doing that today. Or actually, maybe I should try to do both, and then you can tell me what works better for you. I'm not sure if that will work out, but I always talk a long time anyway, so let's just try it out. The way is, oh, I have some kiwi stuck in my teeth, or kiwi unstuck from my teeth and down my throat now. Yes. Good start. Gonna be a good day today, I can feel that. Okay, so let me try disprove that the Earth is flat. Again, I have many ways to do it. There's the famous ship over the horizon thing. And yeah, you can do that in real life if you are near a harbor or any seawater at all. You can be lucky to see a ship, and if you're really lucky, you can see the ship sailing away from you. That's the important factor. It has to sail away from you. It doesn't have to sail away from the shore. If you was on a ship out in the water and the ship was sailing along the shore but away from you, it will also work fine. However, you still have to be lucky to find a ship that is sailing away from you, and if it's not sailing away from you, you have to do a lot of work to get on the right side of the ship, so it will eventually sail away from you. So that's not the easiest one to do, I know that, but you can use the same principles about things disappearing under the horizon. But how do you make things disappear if it's not a ship sailing away from you? Yeah, you could use a car driving away from you, but a car is quite small compared to a ship, especially in the height, and it's the height that's important. A car is only 1 to 2 meters in the height, and that is a very big number, and I really like to explain it, but I should not, but that's how my brain works. So however, a car can be, the smallest car I have heard about on that's legal on the road is 1 meter and 3 centimeters in the height, and it's of course a hypercar. It's only about aerodynamics, therefore it's not that high, because the lower the car, the better aerodynamics, of course. And some cars can be up to 2 meters, maybe even higher. I don't think I have heard about a car that's higher than 2 meters. However, what is a car? A van can be higher than 2 meters. A truck is always higher than 2 meters. And there is actually a road legal monster truck is kind of car that's of course like really high, 5 meters or something. So yeah, actually a car can be way higher than 2 meters, but when I'm talking about car, I'm talking about maximum a Hummer, and that's maybe not a car, but I also kind of normal on the streets. Not in my country at least, but in America. America has big cars, so if I should take you guys with me, I can say up to 2 meters. And a van is also normal. Things people could call a car. However, let's just say the chance of you to find a car driving away from you, if you are so lucky you can find a car driving away from you, it will probably be between 1 or 2 meters at least. That's not very high compared to a ship that can be actually 30 meters high. It's a cruise ship, maybe 50 something, I don't know. At least 15 meters high with the pole. If it's a sailboat, 15 meters high will be very normal. So it's way easier to see a ship sailing away from you. Also because ship is in water, and water is always in water, if you get what I mean. Like the water path, the water bar, you have to see if something is in water, if something is perfectly in water. Water is of course always perfectly in water. That's where the term in water came from, because that's what water is. So that's a good thing. But a car on the road, if you were out in nowhere and it was just a road, maybe you will see it drive under the horizon. But the problem is, even there, and again you have to be lucky to see that, because most of the time there will be houses or trees or something in the way, something the car can hide behind before it drives under the horizon. But even if you were on a straight road out in nowhere, you cannot be sure that it's actually the horizon it's disappearing under, because a road doesn't need to be in water to be a road. A road can have steep curves and stuff. A road, I had actually driven on a road that was going like this all the time. So it could be that it was going down under the ground you were standing on. Your ground is maybe 100 meters over the water. It could be it was going down to 50 meters over the water. You don't know that just by standing on the road, so it's not easy for you to disprove the theory by doing that. So that is also, it's really hard to find an alternative to the ship under the horizon by finding stuff that's moving away from you. So how do you disprove this, or how do you do this experiment without using stuff that's moving away from you? That's actually quite easy, because you just have to move instead. So the thing is, when you are standing on the ground, your eyes are maybe 1 meter and 70 centimeters over the ground. Over. Did I say over or under? Over. Oh yeah. And that means that affects your horizon. So that means you see the horizon the way you see, because of your eye height. But if you bend down and lay flat on the ground with your head leaning on the ground, your eyesight will be like 10-15 centimeters over the ground instead. So that would be more than a meter, more than 1.5 meter difference. And that's already some difference there. But if you don't want to lay flat on the ground, maybe people don't want that, people don't want to get dirty, you could just find something you can stand up on top of that's like at least 1 meter high. I think personally it should be at least 1 meter high, because then it's easy for you to see the difference. You could actually in theory see a difference just by standing 15 or 20 meters higher, like one step of a stair. But it's getting easier to see how high you go. But it also has to be something you can do quite fast, because you have to remember the point of the horizon. So the thing you do is you stand up, maybe you can bend your knees, something, get so low as possible, look at the horizon, you remember the last thing you can see, and it has to be something, it doesn't have to be something like I can see a tower, because you will probably be able to see the tower too if you stand up. It has to be something where you can just barely see it. And you're like, oh, I can barely see the top of this building in the horizon. And then you lock your eyes on that. And when you have your eyes locked at that, you are standing up on top of the 1 meter high thing. And then you will discover that you are able to see more of that building or whatever than you was able to see just before. When you stand on the ground and bend your knees or whatever you did to get the height difference. And I find it working every single time when I do it. I find it very convincing. Like, it's quite easy for me to see the difference when I just make at least a meter difference in my height. So it's very provable for me, but you have to have a good eyesight and a good memory, a good focus, something. You has to really do this right for it to work, because you has to really focus on the right thing. It has to be long enough out in the horizon. You will not stand here looking at a car that's 5 meters away from you and then stand up a bit, then you will still be able to see the whole car. So you will not really be able to see it different because of that close. It has to be long away for you to see the difference. And you have to really lock your eyes on that single thing and remember what thing you were looking at. Or at least remember it if you're not able to lock your eyes on it. So that's a way to disprove that the Earth is flat immediately. But I have not explained why it is disproving the Earth is flat. It's because if the Earth was flat, then you will actually be able to see indefinitely long. Or you're not sure about that, because is there a limit to how long you were able to see? Maybe there is, but if there were a limit to how long you could see, then if a ship was sailing towards the horizon, then it would disappear immediately. From 1 second to another, poof, it's gone from your eyesight. The whole ship would disappear at once. But if the ship disappeared like this, so you're only able to see the top is not closer at you than the bottom. Actually, it's the other way around, because you are standing on the shore, on the beach, so you're actually standing from the meter 0 over water to almost 2 meters over water, but the ship are sailing on the meter 0 and goes up to the meter 15 over water. So the meter 15, which is the top of the ship, is actually longer away from your eyesight than the bottom, because the bottom is only like 1 meter under your 1.5 meter under your eyesight, but the top is 14 to 15 meter over your eyesight. And that's just some mathematics principles about a triangle and how long the sides are compared to each other. It's called Pythagoras, or what do we call it, something, sentence or something. You can Google Pythagoras and then see what I'm talking about. So if you have your math correct, and Pythagoras is very easy to prove. You can actually just draw a triangle like this and then turn it around, and you can see one side is longer. Or you can use a measurement, something, it will be true. So draw a 1 to 100 drawing where you are 2 centimeters high and the ship are 15 centimeters high, and then draw a line on the bottom and stand both of you on the line, then you will see that the line going to the top of the ship is longer. So if we should prove that to you, draw that drawing now, if you don't know it already. When you have got Pythagoras proven, then you can see that I have just proved that the Earth is not flat, because of the ship are disappearing, not at once, but slowly under the horizon. So to know something is in the way of the ship's bottom, therefore you cannot see it. It's not because it's longer away from you than the top, because it's not. It's clearly not. That's just logic, simple logic. So that's how we can prove it. And this was actually kind of many ways you can prove the Earth is not flat. And these are kind of easy ways to prove. It's something you can do yourself. At least one by stepping higher up and bending down. You can do it yourself anywhere. If there's no, if you're not totally surrounded by building or trees, you can always do this thing. There are other ways too, like when you look at the moon. But this one is a bit don't know what to call it. It's not that easy for people to understand, because also easy for people to be convinced about, because if you think the earth is flat, then you are clearly making up some fantasies in your mind, and if you are making up one fantasy, it's highly likely that you are making up more fantasies. And with fantasy you can almost always disprove the truth by just making up some fantasy that mixed together with the fantasy you're trying to prove. So, but anyway, it is actually a way to prove the Earth is not flat by looking at the moon, because the moon, like every day of the month, except the one day where there's full moon, the moon has a shadow, and the shadow on the moon is the Earth. But if you're talking to a flat earther, you're talking to a person that don't know much about the universe, so maybe you're not convinced that it's the Earth's shadow that's on the moon. However, do we get the light from the sun? Yes. Do we see the moon in the night? Yes. What happens in the night? The sun is not seeable. If you cannot see the sun, then the sun must be on the other end of the earth than where you are standing. And now it sounds like the earth is round again, but you can also do that with a flat earth. Because with a flat earth, if this was the surface of the earth where all 7 billion people lived, then there will be an edge of the earth all around, and the sun must be on the other side of that edge when you're able to see the moon, but the sky is dark. So when you see the moon, the sun, which are clearly bigger than us, emits some light around the sun, around the earth, but not through the earth. Therefore the earth are making a shadow on what you can see on the sky. And what is the biggest thing on the sky when it's night? That's the moon. Therefore it's easiest to see the earth's shadow on the moon, and therefore you are able to see the earth's shadow on the moon in the night. So it makes kind of sense. The moon's shadow are always a part of a perfect sphere. You always get the perfect circular or part of a circle shadow on the moon. And that makes sense if the earth was flat, but a circular form of flat. But that will only work if the sun was directly under the flat surface of the earth and the moon was directly on top. But sometimes the moon are over in the corner of your sky picture, and sometimes the sun are not even going totally down, but it's still a little bit light, it's still a sunset. And if that is true, then the shadow of the earth are hitting the light like this with a really sharp angle. And if that was the case, it will not be a perfect circle. It will be becoming more ellipses instead. And at some point it will actually be a perfect rectangular shape instead. If the moon was rising at the same time that the sun was set, then the earth will be this, the thickness of the flat surface of the earth will be what you are seeing on the moon. So it'll just be a line, and you could see both sides of the moon, but with a line through the moon. And that's never happened, of course. And that must mean one thing: the earth is a perfect sphere. But again, you can, with fantasy, you can easily say something like, oh, the moon shadow is coming from something other circle that's bigger than the Earth is and is under the Earth or something, whatever. If you don't do science, then you have no proof of anything. You have no proof of how the universe works, and therefore you can just make up things in the big black hole of the knowledge you don't know and don't believe in. So you could easily do that, but the one about the horizon, that will not be possible if the Earth was not flat. Unless you were having some magic happening where it is just magically fucking with your eyesight from the bottom and up. But that sounds very unlikely in my head. So if you really want to believe that, then you really just want to believe whatever you want to believe. So there's no point in making an argument at all, discussing anything with you. So I don't remember if I had more. Yes, there's also, of course, we have pictures of the Earth from the moon and other places in space where we have reads and try to turn around and take a picture of Earth. And you can easily see that Earth is a perfect, or not, actually it's not a perfect sphere, but that's another story. But it looks like a perfect sphere to our eyes. It's very physical. That could be a proof, right? But flat earthers don't recognize pictures from space. They just say it's animated, and to be honest, today everything can be animated, so that makes sense. However, when we was on the moon the first time, which also many people don't believe, then we also took some pictures of the Earth. And that's why I'm saying we have pictures from the moon, because that's the pictures we have from the moon towards the Earth. And at that point in time, I know Star Wars came around the same time, but Star Wars was also the best CGI, whatever you will call it, what they used at that time we ever have seen. And yeah, NASA are rich and they could probably do something in the same amount of quality, but it will not look that real as it did the pictures that actually exist from the moon. So I don't believe we were that good as animation at that point in time. But today we could easily make animation. Actually, we have the Universe Simulator, and that is actually animations of the Earth and not pictures, and it looks quite real. And when you look at these pictures, you can easily see that you can maybe see North America. Maybe you can see both North and South America. A little bit of each, probably at the same time, but you will not be able to see Europe and Africa and Asia. At least not all at once. You cannot see all at once. And that's because they are on the other side of the Earth. So that proves that the Earth are not flat, because then we will be able to see everything at once. We also have maps. For a long period of time we have these maps. We have had that for thousands of years. We have had maps where Europe is in the middle, and we have the Americas on the left and the Asias on the right. And many people are saying that if you have to travel from, like the flat earthers, the thing with, they recognize that Americas and Asia exist at the same time. They don't say one of these continents don't exist, but they say if you have to travel from America to Asia, then you take the way through on top of Europe. You fly over Europe to get to Asia, because you cannot do the other way around, because there is nothing on the other way. The Earth just stops where the map stops. But that's not true, like you probably know, because most people watching YouTube are either from the Americas or Asia, so the chances of you being from one of these continents is very high. So you probably know that if you have to go from America to Asia or the other way around, then you are traveling the other way around the Earth, because you are actually quite close. Not really close because there are a lot of water there, and that's probably why they have chosen to cut the map at these points, because there's nothing really interesting there, it's only water. But it's still way shorter than taking all the way through the map to get into Asia. That's quite stupid. For example, if you are to get from California to Japan, that's on California is on the west side of USA, you probably know that. And Japan is on the east side of East Asia, so very east. So you're quite close. So you will definitely take this way around. Even from Europe to Thailand, not even Japan, but to Thailand is 17 hours in a flight. Last time I heard about it. So it could easily be 20 hours to get to Japan. And so it's almost a full day. Earth day it takes to just get from Europe to Japan. If you have to go from USA, from California, west coast USA to Japan, it will take 2 full days in a flight to get there. Then it will be easier to just fly up in the air and staying still for almost a full day, where the Earth has turned so Japan is underneath you, and then go down, and then you will be there in under 24 hours, because that's how Earth works. So of course you will never do that. That would be stupid. If you should take a flight that's more than 24 hours, it will always be better to go the other direction, because it cannot take 24 hours if you go the opposite way than the Earth rotates, because then the Earth will help you with some hours actually. So if you have to take a really long trip with a flight, it will always be better to go against the rotation of the Earth. But that's another thing I'm thinking about. Just thought about now. That could be a great idea to solve that problem. So I think if you have ever, if you are a person living in the USA, there's probably a lot of flat earthers there. No offense, but you hear a lot about flat earthing in American documentaries or something. And also there are over 300 million people in the USA, so there's a lot of space to be a flat earther somewhere around there. However, if you have ever traveled to Asia, I think you cannot be a flat earther, because then you have just disproven your own theory by just flying the other way around the Earth. And if you look out the window, just sometimes you will see that there's some water on the west coast, and then you see that suddenly Japan is at the horizon. And you see that you don't see the underside of the surface of the Earth, because there's no underside, because it's a sphere. So I don't really get how we can be flat earthers today, because if you're traveling the world, like if you have been in every single country in the world, then you know something about how the world it works, and then you cannot be a flat earther. I have still, unbelievable enough, I have still only been in Europe. I have been in most of the countries in Europe, but I have never been outside of Europe. So in my experience, the Earth could actually be flat when we're talking about maps and stuff. People could have been lying to me, and there could actually exist something on the other side of USA and on the other side of Japan that there's just not on the map, that people have not wanted to draw. There could be something out in these waters I don't know of, because I have not traveled all around the world, so I have not seen what comes next when you fly over a country and such. So for me, I could be a flat earther if I have not experimented like we talked about before. So, but if you have ever traveled to every country in the world, or just 200 plus countries, then you cannot be a flat earther. If you have ever traveled from the Americas to the Asia, then you cannot be a flat earther, because that's normally there to cut the Earth. So don't really get why and how you can be it, but now we get too much into my opinions, I think. that's some of the many problems with flat earthers, and many different ways you can disprove that the earth is flat. But let's try the other way around. Let's try discovering which shape the earth may be able to have. And well, it will be very repetitive because the first thing I will do to discover the shape of the earth will actually be to look at the horizon again and see what happens towards the horizon. Because actually the first thing you maybe ever conclude about the earth is that the earth is flat. And it's that baby mentality that just gets stuck in some people's head and they don't want to be disprove something they have believed at one point. I think that's the problem here. Because when you look out of your window, you will see mostly flat surface. At least if you're not living on a mountain or something. But here in Denmark, that's one of the most flattest countries in the world. We don't actually have any official mountains because we don't have hills that's high enough to be considered a mountain. However, we have hills that's more than 100 meters high. That's apparently not enough. So it's not totally flat, but we have very few of the hills. Most of the country is just almost totally flat. So almost nowhere I have been here in Denmark. I have been looking out and see anything but flat earth. So of course the first thing you will believe when you start your life as a human and you use your eyes and your brain on the same time is that earth is probably flat. At least the country you live in is flat. And if that is flat, why should anything else not be flat? So that's actually not a bad way to start with having a little bit of a conclusion that the earth looks kind of flat. But then I look towards the horizon and then I will see that it is not flat because then things will not disappear. So what can it be if things disappear in the horizon? Well, it cannot be flat. We have found out that. But what is not flat? If it's not flat like this, then it can be bending this way or it can bend this way. It's certainly not bending this way, because then I will be able to see Asia somewhere up in the sky. So that's not happening. So it must be bending this way. It could also just like tilt, but then some of the earth will still bend this way. But the one that's bending up, again, then I will see some countries up in the sky, just a little bit. So all of the earth must be bending this way at some point, because I don't see anything particular country like when I'm looking towards the horizon in any direction. So in all directions the earth must be bending down at some point. But by just doing one experiment where I can see something bending under the horizon, that doesn't mean it's bending equally all over the place. That just means it's bending out there in the direction I'm looking at. So that means the earth could actually be a shape like a cube where it just suddenly bends down when you look in all the horizons. But then if you move, you will discover that the bend doesn't happen the same point every time. It depends on how close you are. So the bends always happen in the same distance to you. And that's actually enough for you to discover that the bend must be equally dispersed around the earth. The bend still seems to happen quite suddenly. So the Earth could be like an octagon instead of a cube, but octagon is not enough because again then the spin will happen just twice as much as if it was a cube. So maybe it will be like a hexagonal, what is called the 16 points bends, but that will probably not be true, but it can be like bending 100 different times around, so you can see 100 different horizons. And if you still think that's too little, then you can up that number all the time, and what you would end with is at some point something very close to a perfect sphere. So that actually very fast become the most possible shape. It could also be something where the Earth, like on the horizon, the Earth like bends a little bit, but maybe it will catch up again. But if that was true, then you will be able to stand somewhere in the Earth where the Earth again shapes up towards the sky. And again, that never happened. That has never happened to me when I look at the horizon. And if it has ever happened to anybody, then I'll be very sure you will have heard about it in the news or on the internet, at least nowadays, with the big globalization we have. And never have I seen a picture where the horizon goes up like this. Or I have in movies, clearly animated, but I've never heard the stories about some place on the Earth where the Earth actually bends up. So it will not catch up again. It will continue bending all the time, no matter where you are on the Earth. And if that's true, then at least the Earth bends the same direction all the time, but does it stop at some point? And can you fall off the Earth? That will actually still be possible if you have never traveled west of USA again, or east of East Asia. So you could believe that the Earth was not flat, but it has an end, because it's bending too little, so there will not be enough countries in the world for the Earth to be total physical. So the only problem with that is, if we have discovered the whole of the world, then we would have discovered this end of the world. And again, if you travel from USA to Asia, then you don't see this hole in the bottom of the else very spherical Earth, so therefore there's no end of the world. You have seen that. But again, now I'm mixing stuff you can discover for yourself with stuff you can be told by others. Because people could, in theory, people could have lied to you all the time. All the scientists could have lied about the shape of the Earth, the rotation of the Earth, what the stars in the universe are made of, and that the Earth is not the center of the universe, everything. That you can fly from USA to Asia could be a lie if you have not tried it yourself. Even if you have tried it yourself, it could be a lie that you could fly to Europe in the other direction. However, if you have tried that yourself, maybe something happens in the flight. Maybe they try to cheat you in some way, and you don't know how they cheat you, but maybe they just succeed in cheating you, and you actually flying in the same direction when you fly to Asia as when you fly to Europe. So if you really believe that people try to lie to you, you could actually believe that every single thing you've ever been told was a lie. However, the looking towards the horizon, you can test that yourself. So that one always works. So you can believe that many of the other things you know about the Earth is a lie, but you can never believe that the Earth is flat, because you can disprove that yourself. now I was talking about the Earth was flat again. And I should not do that because I should teach you how the Earth works from the bottom up. But I also think I succeeded in that. And I think this is just a conclusion you can get from building up how the Earth works. We also have other features of the Earth I want to talk about. I'm not sure if it should be in this video because it's probably always very long. I'm not sure about how long it is. 45 minutes. It's not so bad. It's better than other videos. So yeah, the rotation of the Earth. Does it rotate? How fast does it rotate? That's also a hard question and something people don't want to believe in. But if you really don't believe in science, you can think that the moon and the sun are rotating around the Earth and the Earth is the center of the universe and therefore the Earth don't move. However, I always like to think it like that. Why should the Earth be the only thing that's not moving? If you believe these big objects exist, you can also believe it was just the sky. We have the clouds. They're clearly very close to Earth. They are in the Earth's atmosphere. You could believe every single other object you see are just smaller objects, also in the Earth's atmosphere. If you believe that, maybe it makes kind of sense for you to believe the Earth is in the middle of the universe. And that's what we believed like thousands of years ago. But what happened thousands of years ago? The thing that happened was that we was beginning to discover the distance to the different objects in the sky. We could clearly see that the sun was much longer away than the moon, which was much longer away from us than the sky. The sky, you can say that, and the clouds in the sky. How do we discover that, do you say? It's actually quite easy to see that the sun is always behind the clouds and not the opposite way around. And the sun is behind the moon, not the opposite way around. But that only gives you a slightly feeling of what is longest away, not how long it actually is. And that is a very long and complicated story, how we discover the different objects in the universe and where they are and so on. So, fuck that for now. I should not make this video multiple hours anyway. But, when I think about stuff, I always think very statistically about it. I always think very not very solitaire about it. So when I think about the Earth and the universe, I will find it very strange if the Earth was a very special place and it was the only one of a kind. There should be more Earths out in the universe, in my way of thinking, because it would be strange if there was not. And this is a segue to actually the next topic I want to talk about, but in a video by itself, because that's also a very long topic, about aliens, and if there is aliens or if there's not aliens, or what should you think about aliens in the universe. That will be the next topic I'm talking about. Probably the day after I upload this video. So, I always think that there should be more than one. One is a strange number and one is very statistically not impossible, what do you say, unrealistically, what the fuck I'm trying to say. There's not a very good chance of something only happening once. It's the same thing I think about the sun and the moon. There cannot only be one sun and one moon. And that's true, there's only one sun in our solar system. That's why it's called a solar system. However, there can be 2 or 3 suns in a solar system where the sun are orbiting each other. And therefore we call it just one solar system, because the planets are actually orbiting the combined masses of the 2 or 3 suns. So that's a whole other more complicated topic. And moons, it seems like the Earth only has one moon. And I say it seems like because it actually has two. But to go back to that, we see that Jupiter and Saturn has multiple moons. So there is multiple moons in our solar system, and there can be multiple moons orbiting one planet, like there can be multiple suns orbiting each other in one solar system. So statistically, anything can happen. Statistically, it will never always be one sun with a couple of planets, and every planet only have one moon. That will almost never happen, and it will at least not be the only thing that will happen out in the universe. That just makes sense to me. And the Earth actually has two moons. We have discovered that quite recently, and maybe it has more. But it seems like, for now, that the Earth has two moons because we have seen some object long away, like longer away than Pluto, and Pluto's already very long away from us and from the Sun. But we've seen a little object very long away from the Earth and the Sun, and it seems like that object is actually orbiting the Earth. But of course, it's orbiting the Earth in a very long motion, and I'm not even sure if it even seems possible, because the Earth has only the mass the Earth has. So if things get too long away from the Earth, it will get out of orbit. But the science for now at least says that it seems like this object is actually orbiting the Earth. So I guess I believe in that right now. And also it's more fun to believe that the Earth has two moons than one, because for a long time we have think the Earth has one moon, so most people not interested in science will think it has one moon, so it's always a good party effect to throw out that we actually has two moons. So yeah, things never happen alone in the universe. We are not special. Nothing is special in the universe. There always is something very likely the thing you are talking about. And therefore it would be strange if the Earth we lived on was the center of the universe, and there only was this one sun and one moon orbiting it. It just don't feel right for me. So the idea about there being multiple planets in our solar system, that's very different, but also very like each other, but still so different that we cannot live on the other planets. That makes sense for me. But it also makes sense that there should be more Earths again. There should be more planets more like us, because the other planets in the solar system, they're not a lot like us. I think there are probably some planet out there that's more like us than what we have in our solar system, than Mars, for example. So that has always just made sense for me. It makes more sense than the flat Earth perspective of the universe. So why believe that? Why believe the one that makes less sense? Well, maybe it makes more sense for you for some reason, but I think the reason, that's also something I was, you could call it something I learned, but it's also just a belief. So some belief I heard also 2 days ago, that the reason why they are flat earthers is because the education has failed. It's because we have not learned, not all people has learned how to think right. Because if you think right, you cannot believe in flat Earth. And that actually something I have also been into a little bit in this video, where I think it's totally stupid to believe in flat Earth, because it's so easy to disprove. If you think experimental about it, then you will disprove it very fast. The only reason you can believe in flat Earth is if you just believe things you read on the internet, because you read it on the internet. Like you don't have to, you have to be easy to be manipulated, you can say. Like if people say this is true because the other thing is false because of one thing, and you don't think more about, but you just think, oh, you just say the other one was false, therefore you must be true. And that's also what is happening with the coronavirus right now, I think, and I will not talk about that in this video, because I don't want this video to be totally removed from YouTube, but also it's a very long story and I don't want to get into it. But let's just say that there's many different beliefs in the coronavirus, and many of these beliefs are just made of stories on the internet that has gone into too many people's heads nowadays. So yeah, the same principles happen to flat earthers. And actually I know someone that believe in some strange theories about the coronas, and also because of that actually believe in flat earth now. And yes, I have not disproven him yet, but it will happen, trust me. But it's only because I have not seen him in real life. I wait for the right moment to disprove him. So it's not because it's hard to disprove it, just because I wait to the right moment, okay? So because of all the corona theories on the internet has turned on that part of his brain, the manipulative part of his brain, he's starting to believe every single stupid conspiratorial theory on the internet. So now he believes that the earth is flat and whatever, Illuminati, inside job, Simpsons know everything, whatever theories that exist. I don't know if he believes all of them, but he will probably easily be able to if he read about all of them. Because he has unlearned the right way of thinking, the constructive criticism and experimental way of thinking. Every time I read something I don't know or have not heard about before, and I say I don't know because it doesn't need to be truth, but if it was true I will not know it when I read it. Every time I read something I don't know, then no matter if it's a scientist or if it's a stupid person on Facebook, I will always look at it in a criticism way and try to disprove it. And if it's if I'm so lucky I can disprove it, then I don't believe it. If I cannot disprove it, then it doesn't mean I believe it. It means it's still a possibility, and then I will research it some more and see if there is any proof to the theory. And if there's any proof that makes kind of sense, then I will start to believe it. So always try to disprove first. And also, I think I don't believe in one single conspiracy theory, and that's because every single conspiracy theory has very stupid proofs. Like every proof of a conspiracy theory, I know stuff enough just by myself that every proof is clearly just a lie to me. Like for example, the proof that we have not been on the moon because the flag was waving is actually a proof that we was on the moon, because the flag was clearly waving in another way that is waving on the earth, and therefore the flag could not exist on earth. It must exist somewhere else. And the moon has, there is some different meaning about what you can call an atmosphere and what you cannot call an atmosphere, but the moon has something atmospheric like, at least. And it also has a very big mass which make gravity exist. But the gravity on the moon is a sixth of the gravity of Earth. So the gravity is less, so everything goes by slower. And this is a very fast explanation, and it probably sounds wrong when I've just seen some stuff and just say conclusion now. But when you're collecting all the things you know about the moon and the moon compared to the Earth, you can clearly see that the flag should be moving slower than on Earth. And it should not fall straight down, because if it was falling straight down, then the gravity would be kind of high. But it's not higher on the moon, it's lower on the moon. Because it's lower on the moon, the flag was waving longer with less wind than it needs on the Earth to wave, and slower because it goes slower on the moon. So to look at how the flag waves on the pictures, or not pictures too, but videos on the moon, you can see that it's clearly taken on the moon, or else NASA has really tried to emulate the gravity on the moon to do that clip. And that makes also sense to do, but then it's not a proof that they are not on the moon, because they actually made a good job, because it really looks like they are on the moon. So every time someone tries to prove a conspiracy theory, they actually disprove the theory in my head, because I have not been thinking about the flag's movement before I heard the theory about we were not on the moon, and someone tried to prove me wrong that we have been on the moon. That was the first time I heard about the flag, and immediately my brain was thinking, oh, that means we was on the moon, actually, when you say it like that. And that's so easy my brain has to disprove a conspiracy theory. It's like, oh, I don't really want to say, no, I don't, I'm not tell this, but I heard a very stupid theory about something about the coronavirus. I will not say anymore, but it was just very stupid, and it took me exactly, or I'm not say exactly, but at least maximum 1 second to disprove the theory in my head. So that was not hard. It was really easy. So sometimes it's really easy to disprove theory, and sometimes the problem with conspiracy theories is they're throwing so many facts that is just so wrong out that you will never be able to convince me to believe in a conspiracy theory, or at least not the one that exists today. Because if you want to make me believe that we were not on the moon, you should not be saying lies to me, things that are clearly lie. Maybe you will be so lucky you can say one thing to me I cannot disprove immediately in my head when you say it to me. But of course that will happen at some point if you are not a stupid person, because every proof I have here are just stupid. So if it was me, I could make a proof that we have not been on the moon that will be better than every proof that exists out there today, because I'm more clever than everyone that believe we have not been on the moon. So it's quite easy for me to make a proof that's better than what other people has done. And if there was actually a clever person believing in we have not been on the moon, he could probably make a proof I could not disprove immediately. But even if that happened, I have here 10, 20 other proof that is just lies. So of course that will happen at some point. When you lie a lot, then at some point you can lie and you will not guess immediately that it's a lie. So it will not make me believe in we have not been on the moon. And the only reason I will not believe that is because I heard so many lies about it. So that's the stupid thing. The most stupid thing about conspiracy theory is that they lie too much. They clearly lie all the time. So when they ever tell you something that looks just a little bit sane, then you will not believe it because you have told too many lies. It's like the story with the wolf. If you call for wolf every single day, at some point people will not believe you. So when the wolf actually comes, people will don't hear you and don't care that you are calling wolf. So the wolf will just eat you. The story is something like this. I'm pretty sure the story exists in many different ways. However, I'm pretty sure you know which story I'm talking about, and you can tell it to yourself if you can do it better than me. But that's the thing. If you tell lies too much and it's clearly a lie, then you can tell the truth and people will not believe you. So the thing I'm saying, even if it was truth, I will not believe it anyway. And if you tell a lie that seems like it's true, I will maybe have believed it if it was the first lie you was telling. But because you have told all these stupid lies that you can clearly see was a lie, then I will not believe the new lie where it sounds like it's true. And that's why I will never believe in the conspiracy theories that exist today, because they have just fucked themselves up already. So there's no reason to believe in them, and there will never be a reason to believe in them. But I was trying to talk about the Earth rotation, that didn't happen so well. Well, the Earth actually rotates, but no, I should not talk about that already. I should talk about why the Earth rotates. Can you see the Earth rotation? If the Sun is bigger than the Earth, it makes sense the Earth rotates around the Sun. That just makes sense in my head. If the Earth rotates around the Sun, and the Sun is stationary, let's just believe in that for now. It's not true, by the way, but let's believe in that for now. Then if the Earth didn't rotate, it will take the amount of time it takes for the Earth to go around the Sun to 1 day. And if you don't know, one rotation around the Sun is 1 year, so 1 day will take 1 year. But that's clearly 2 different time lines we are working with here. So a day don't take a year. You know that already. So what happens when the Sun goes down? Then it must be because of the Earth. You can clearly see also the Sun is so long away that a year or a day will not take 1 day. The Earth will not be able to rotate around the Sun in 1 day. So it's easy to see that it must be the Earth that are rotating around itself. That's why the Sun go down every single evening. And then you see that the Moon does a similar thing. So is that because the Earth are rotating around itself and the Moon is stationary? Then the Moon will be in the same place compared to the Sun all the time, but it's not. But that could mean that the Moon are not stationary, but the Earth are still moving around the Moon. However, when you discover that the Moon are smaller than the Earth, it makes more sense that the Moon are rotating around the Earth. So all these things just make sense in logical thinking here, I think. However, how fast does the Earth rotate? Because it don't feel like the Earth rotates. And some people want to disprove that the Earth rotates, and the way that disprove it is by you should be able to feel the rotation, right? But there is something to learn in physics about speed and acceleration and thing. And the speed of stuff is not, you're not able to feel the speed of stuff. If you're driving with 100 kilometers an hour or 500 kilometers an hour, you will not be able to feel the difference just by the speed itself. If you're driving in a car, you will probably feel some bump on the road. And if you're driving with 500 kilometers an hour, you will probably feel them a lot, and it will be very rough ride for you. Especially because cars that go 500 kilometers an hour, or even close to that, they have a sports mode that is not a comfortable ride. That's why it's not called a comfort mode. And that's the only way they can go so fast. So you cannot go so fast in comfort mode anyway. So you will feel it a lot, but that's not because it's driving faster, that's because it's driving less comfortable. And there's more bumps on the road is not perfect. However, when you drive on the road and you drive like 50 kilometers an hour, you feel it when you speed up from like 0 to 50, or even when you go on the highway and speed up from 50 to 110 or 130 depending on where you live. But when you take the train, and the trains are actually very slow in Denmark compared to the rest of Europe, the maximum speed a train can go in Denmark, or must go, shall go, is 180 kilometers an hour. But that's about 3 times the speed you go on the normal roads with your car. So it's still a lot faster than a car, but you don't feel as shit when you're sitting in a train. And that's because the railroad are mostly just flat and straight, so you don't feel any bumps. And also the train are very big, very heavy, and very long, and that's all things that makes it less bumpy. It's like there's also something is how bigger the vessel you are sitting inside, the less you feel speed. So because the train is so much bigger than a car, you also feel the speed less. However, when you're sitting, if you have ever sit in one of the newest and most expensive Mercedes cars, then you can feel that even if you drive more than 100 kilometers an hour, you don't feel it moving at all. If you close your eyes, you can feel like you're sitting in the couch inside your living room, because they are heating the seats, and it's leather seats, so it can really feel like a comfortable couch inside your living room when you close your eyes. If you really think about it, you can actually believe in that, because you don't feel a single movement at all in some of the cars, at least. And that's because they have really tried to make the ride as comfortable as possible. They have really good springs, so the springs compensating for the bumps on the road. So the springs are actually that good nowadays. They can remove every bump on the road for your feeling, at least. So that's actually, if you know someone that don't believe the Earth rotates and have this stupid argument that if it was that fast we will be able to feel it, then just put them in a Mercedes and you can disprove that theory, at least. But now I have not disproven that the Earth not rotates. I have just disproven the reason people believe it don't rotate. And a point I haven't said yet is the thing you feel are acceleration. So you feel it when a car goes from 100 kilometers an hour to 200 kilometers an hour. You feel that difference in speed if it does it fast enough. If it just bottom down the speed all the way, then you will feel the difference, because this acceleration you feel, and that's what cheats people to think it's the speed you feel. But when you have the speed concentrated at one single point, then you haven't any feeling for the speed anymore. So therefore you don't feel the rotation of the Earth, because it's a constant rotation, and it's very constant, so you don't feel it at all. And also another thing is you are used to it. That could also be a factor, because when you're used to something, you don't think about it anymore. It's like when you're putting something behind your ear, you will feel it, but in 15 minutes you will not feel it anymore, because you have gotten used to that. Humans are very easy to get used to stuff, so they don't feel stuff a lot. It's like when I have underpants on, I don't feel I have underpants on, because I'm used to that. I actually feel it more when I take them off. Then I can feel I don't have underpants on. And it's very strange, because I should not be able to feel anything when I don't have any clothes on, but actually I feel it more when I'm naked than I feel it when I have clothes on, because I have clothes on the most of the time. So that's what I'm used to. I'm not so used to being naked. So that's very strange, actually. I have been thinking a lot about that. I think a lot about it yesterday, actually. But that's a whole other story. Probably not too long anyway, because I've just told it, so whatever. So we get very used to stuff. So that could also be a factor on that. However, the constant acceleration or constant speed, acceleration is another thing, actually. But the constant speed of the Earth rotation is enough for us to not be able to feel a thing. So, but how fast do the Earth rotate? Well, actually, because the Earth has the shape it has, and it rotates around the North and South Pole axis, that means if you were standing straight on the North Pole, you will actually not be rotating. Well, at least not a lot. If you were staying perfectly, you would be rotating like this. So it will not be like you are going forward or anything. You will be rotating around your own axis. Very slow, because it will take you 24 hours to go around your own axis, and I just did that in 1 second or something, and I didn't go all the way around. But however, it will take me a few seconds to do it. If I was standing on the floor right now and used 24 hours to turn around myself, I will probably not even recognize by myself that I have turned around myself when the 24 hours has passed, because it's a long time to turn around your own axis. So it will be almost 0 kilometers an hour. and it'll be almost no rotation at all you will have if you were staying straight on the North Pole or South. It's the same on the South. However, the fastest you will get is if you're standing on the equator, because that's the widest point on the rotation. If you see the Earth from the side, where North Pole and South Pole are single points, so there will be no rotation, then you have the widest part of the Earth. Of course, the Earth is a sphere, so it's equally wide all the time, depending on which way you use the measurement. But when you see it from North to South Pole, the widest point of the Earth is the equator. So therefore, it will be the longest rotational path you can be on. And actually, on the equator, it turns with around 1,700 kilometers an hour. And you kind of know how fast it is. Again, I'll say some of the fastest cars today almost go 500 kilometers an hour. That's not even a third of that. The fastest train in the world are the one in Japan going 585 kilometers, not miles, 585 kilometers an hour. That's not even the third of this, or it's actually just around the third of the speed of the equator. So actually, if you were driving, now it gets really tricky for your brain, because when you are driving, or if you were driving the Japanese fastest train in the world around the equator, but you were driving in the opposite direction of Earth rotation, then you will actually get the Earth rotation down to around 1100 kilometers an hour. So you will rotate slower than all the other people on the equator. But will you feel it more? Well, the Japanese trains should be very comfortable. So, but not the most comfortable train, because it's also the fastest, and it's very hard to make something fastest and comfortable like the cars that drive 500 kilometers an hour. Is not the most comfortable. It's the Mercedes driving 100. So you will probably feel more than you do just staying on the equator. But in theory, if they made the train as comfortable that as other trains, you will actually be able to feel nothing and be rotating slower than other people rotate. But it feels very strange if you are driving through the equator at more than 500 kilometers an hour. You will really feel like you're driving in this direction, but you're actually moving in the other direction. Not compared to Earth, of course, because then it will be impossible to go in one of the directions on the Earth. Then we always have to move this way. So if you have to go from Europe to USA, and you do that, I'll have to remember which way does Earth rotate. We have the sun that rise in east and go down in west, and that means the Earth rotates the other way around. So if you were standing on east and you were standing where the sun was rising and the sun moved left from you towards the west, then it's actually you that's moving towards the east. So that means the Earth rotates like in the direction where if you go from USA to Europe, you were actually traveling in the same direction as the Earth rotates. But because you cannot travel with 1700 kilometers an hour, you will not be able to reach Europe because you are traveling slower than the Earth rotates. And therefore, if you travel from Europe to USA, you actually need to travel from USA to Asia and then from Asia to Europe, because you can only travel in that direction. You cannot travel in another direction because you're not fast enough. Of course, that is not what's happening, and that's because it's compared to the Earth. If you travel on the Earth's surface, you can actually travel the opposite way of the direction of the Earth. And the reason you can do that is because the atmosphere turns with the Earth. So you don't get that wind resistance you will normally get if you're trying to run 1700 kilometers an hour. Then you will get a lot of resistance and you will not be able to run that fast. But because you move compared to the Earth, then you can move by 1 kilometer an hour, very slow walking. and you actually move by 701 kilometers an hour. That's not exactly, but just to make you understand. But it's compared to the universe to move that fast, and not compared to the Earth. So that makes the difference. It's like when you're sitting in a car with 100 kilometers an hour. If you're sitting in a Mercedes driving 100 kilometers an hour, you cannot run faster than 100 kilometers an hour. That means you should not be able to move forward in the seat, because when you do that, you move with 101 kilometers an hour. But you can actually move by 101 kilometers an hour, because you move compared to the Mercedes and not compared to the Earth. So if the Mercedes has no windshield and the wind was going against you, then you will be sitting like this in the seat and not be able to move your arm. But that's not how it works, because you have a windshield and you are inside the vessel of the Mercedes, so you can actually move your arm. You can move just as fast as you can standing still on the ground. And that's the same principle used here in the Earth rotation. So it makes sense you can move with more than 1700 miles an hour in one direction, and you move with minus 1700 miles an hour in the other direction. So it should be way easier to go one way or another, but it's just as easy to go everywhere on the Earth. And that's how we can move that fast on the equator. And again, yeah, the reason you don't feel it is because of the atmosphere, everything moves with you. But the funny thing about it is that if you live up in the north, like me for example, and you move down to the equator, then you're actually going from moving with around 500 kilometers an hour to 1700 kilometers an hour, and that's a lot. Again, that's 3 times as much. So what happens with your body when you move like this is actually quite interesting, because as faster you move, the less you are pushed down on the Earth, or more correctly, the more you are pushed away from the Earth. You know that from the spinning disc we have at some playgrounds. It's the old steel cage thing you spin by yourself. There's no motor in it or anything. And if you got really unfriendly with another guy, he could spin it when you sitting inside it, and you will fly off at some point, because it will go too fast for you to keep yourself clinging to the handles or something. And that's what we know as the centrifugal force, but it's actually not a force. But it's a whole other story why it's not a force. But the centrifugal force are pushing you away from stuff that rotates very fast. And that's actually what happens to the Earth too. When you rotate at 1700 kilometers an hour, as you do on the equator, you actually be pushed away from Earth. But you're not flying off. Why are you not flying off? Because you also suck towards the Earth. So you still be staying on the Earth, you still feel the gravity towards the Earth. And that's because the Earth are so massive compared to the 1700 miles rotation, or 1700 kilometers rotation. If it was, for example, if it was Pluto, which I think it was, the mass was like a 27th part of, it's a 1/27 part of the mass of the Earth. I believe that was true. So if Pluto was rotating just as fast as Earth, maybe you will fall off, because it doesn't have the mass of the Earth, so it cannot suck you that fast towards the Earth. But the Earth mass are very big compared to the only 1700 kilometers an hour rotation. So therefore the gravity is still stronger than the centrifugal force. And as long as the gravity is stronger than the centrifugal force, then you will still be staying on the Earth. But there will still be the pull. Every forces has to be taken account, even the non-forces like the centrifugal force. because it's still pulling in you. It's just not pulling strong enough to pull you away from Earth. But that means the same thing as if one person are trying to lift you when you are on a weight, then maybe the person is not strong enough to lift you, but it will still make the weight go down. So it will be having a less weight than if the person was not trying to lift you. Even though your weight is not zero because the person has clearly lifted you, but up from the weight. And that is actually what is happening when you are staying on the equator, because you weigh less on the equator than you do up in the north. So that's very interesting. And it's actually very different. I have to remember, I think it was like if it was I think it's like 10 kilo different for every 100 kilo you weight. If you're going from, I'm not sure where the starting point was, but I think it was just around the same point as Denmark, like North America. If you're going from North America and down to Mexico, for example, North America as a continent, Mexico is in North America, I'm stupid. If you're going from northern part of USA, if you're going from Washington DC or New York or something up there, and you're going down to Mexico, maybe the southern part of Mexico, like straight in the equator, then you are actually losing 10 kilos or around 20 pounds of the weight for every 100 kilos or 200 pounds, whatever you weight. That's a lot. That's more than most girls dream of losing. They're like, oh, if I could lose like 2 kilos, I would be so happy. Just move to the south, lose 10 kilos. Boom. So that's very interesting, because when you ask people what you weigh, I weighed 81 kilos. But that's up here in Denmark. I actually have to, you should say where in the world you weigh what you do, because if I'm talking with a Spaniard from Spain, clearly, Spain is quite close to the equator. Not perfectly on the equator, but it's still more than 1,000 kilometers more south than Denmark. If I was talking with someone from Spain, they will probably weigh like 8 kilos less than me, even though they weigh the same as me in my country. So I was talking to a Spaniard and I was like, I'm 81 kilos. And they like, okay, it's recording now. I can see, yeah, it's still recording. Okay. Yeah, this time it actually shuts down twice. So now I really want to end this video really fast. But I was just talking about my weight compared to a Spaniard, and that is quite interesting, because again, if I told the Spaniards I was 81 kilos and he told me he was 77, then he will actually be the heaviest one, because he will be around 85 in my country and I will be about 73 in his country. And therefore you cannot just say your weight just by the number. You have to say which country you have weighed yourself in, at least, to see just about what it really means, the weight, and to be able to compare to the person's weight you are telling your own weight to. In USA it's even harder, because that's a very high country. It's a bit wider than the height, but the height is the most important, because if you're from New York and California, you will probably weigh something different anyway. So you should also tell, if you're from the USA, you should tell how much you weigh in New York and how much you weigh in California. So when you live in New York, if you move down to California, you should tell that your weight is from California now, if you weight yourself again. If you have not weighed yourself in New York, you should still be telling New York weight. But if you start to weigh yourself in California, find out you weigh less, you should be telling California weight. So it's actually kind of important if you should use it for anything, or else the weight starts to mean nothing when you're talking on a global space like I am now. If I was just saying 81 kilos on YouTube, you will think it means something, and you will think 81 of your kilos. But when I think about how many people live in the world and how many people live more south than me, you would probably not think the right thing about me if you were thinking 81 of your kilos. So when I'm talking here on YouTube, I should actually say 81 kilos in Denmark. So to just get a little bit of an idea of what I mean and how much it is in your country. So it's very strange to think about. Also very fun. However, that was way off topic from the Earth rotation. It is depending on the Earth rotation. It's caused by Earth rotation, but it's not why the Earth rotates. And I was not prepared to go that much off topic today, but that was happened with my brain, so let's just roll with it. However, I think I explained quite okay why the Earth rotates and such on, and then I got some good off-topic questions I was thinking about in my brain. So I hope you will think it was at least a little bit interesting or having some fun with it. Maybe you learned something. If not about the Earth rotation, then at least you learned how to say your weight the next time. And if not, again, I hope you just find it a little bit interesting or fun to see this video, or some of it if you skipped through it. However, if you like the video, consider subscribing, and then you can see the other videos I have on my channel. I have, of course, there will be more of these videos, so subscribe for more of these videos, but you can also subscribe for my reviews, tech reviews, unboxings, travel vlogs, or I just forgot what I was about to say. It's gaming videos, of course. I have to, yeah, whatever. I have a lot of things. So take a look. Maybe there's something you like, and if you really like this video, consider liking it, like for real, like down there on the button. Just press it, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye.